Have you ever wondered why a 20% off sale on a brand new car can cause an absolute frenzy, but a 50% discount on table salt goes completely unnoticed? Well, there's a really powerful economic idea that explains this, and trust me, by the end of this, you are going to see it everywhere. Let's dive in.
Really think about that for a second. A big discount on a car. You got people lining up, camping out. It's a whole event. But what if your local grocery store put a massive 50% off sign on salt? Would you even notice? Would you run out and buy 10 years worth? Probably not, right? So this huge difference in how we react, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So what is going on here? What's the secret behind this price puzzle? Well, it turns out our reactions aren't random at all. In fact, they can be predicted by one single incredibly powerful concept in economics.
And that concept is price elasticity of demand, or as everyone calls it, PED. Now I know, it sounds a little technical, maybe a bit academic, but the idea behind it is actually super simple. It's just a way of measuring how sensitive we are, how much our buying habits change when a price goes up or down.
You know, the best way to get this is to picture a rubber band. For some products, just a tiny little pull on the price makes our demand stretch a long way. That's what we call elastic. But for other things, you can pull and pull and pull on that price, and our demand barely budges. That's inelastic. This stretchiness is the key to everything.
Okay, so how do we actually measure the stretchiness? We can't just say something is kind of stretchy. Well, economists have a surprisingly simple formula to put a hard number on it.
And here it is. This is the whole thing. All you do is take the percentage change in the number of items people are buying, and you divide it by the percentage change in the price. The one number you get from this simple division tells you the entire story. It's kind of like magic.
All right, so theory is great, but let's make this real. Imagine your favorite little coffee shop. They're thinking about changing their prices. Let's see how this formula actually plays out for them step by step.
Okay, let's break it down. First, the price of a coffee goes up from £2 to $2.20. Simple math, that's a 10% increase. Now what happens? People react. Sales drop from 100 cups a day down to 80. That's a 20% decrease. Now for the final step. We just plug those two numbers into our formula. So you take that negative 20% change in demand, you divide it by the positive 10% change in price, and what do you get? You get negative 2. So what on earth does negative 2 mean for our coffee shop?
And here's the crucial part. You can just ignore the negative sign. For our purposes, it's always going to be negative because when price goes up, demand goes down. The important thing is the number itself, 2. And since 2 is greater than 1, we officially say that the demand for this coffee is elastic. It means customers reacted more strongly than the price change. The demand stretched a lot.
And this leads us to a really cool idea. Elasticity isn't just a simple yes or no thing. It's actually a whole spectrum that goes all the way from incredibly stretchy to completely rigid.
The two big categories you'll hear about all the time are right here. On one side, you've got elastic demand. That's our coffee shop. A price change causes a bigger reaction from us. This is usually for things we want but maybe don't need, like a meal out or a new gadget. On the other side, you have inelastic demand. Here, even a big price change only causes a tiny reaction. These are often the necessities, right? Like the petrol you need to get to work or your electricity bill.
This table kind of lays out the whole spectrum. At the very bottom, a PED of 0. We call that perfectly inelastic. Think of a life-saving drug. People will pay anything for it. At the very top, perfectly elastic. This is rare, but it happens when you have identical products. If one seller raises their price by even a penny, everyone buys from the other guy. And in between, you have the stuff we see every day. Inelastic goods like cigarettes, elastic goods like designer clothes, and right in the middle, unitary, where the percentages match up perfectly.
Okay, so this is all fascinating stuff, but what does it actually mean for you and me? Why does it matter? Well, it turns out that understanding PED is absolutely critical for how businesses and even governments make huge decisions. This right here is why every business on the planet is obsessed with their PED. Look, if you sell something inelastic, like petrol, raising your price actually increases your total money coming in, because not enough people will stop buying. But if you sell something elastic, like a restaurant meal, raising your price could be a disaster. Your revenue could totally plummet as people just go somewhere else. It's a game changer.
And it is not just businesses that are playing this game. Governments use this exact same logic. When they're deciding what to tax to raise money, they almost always go after inelastic goods. They know they can slap heavy taxes on things like fuel and tobacco because we'll grumble about it, but most of us will keep buying. That gives them a really predictable and steady stream of cash.
So this brings us to the last big question. What actually makes something elastic or inelastic? Why is coffee stretchy, but petrol is rigid? Well, it all boils down to a handful of key factors.
There are basically 5 big ones. First, substitutes. The more choices you have, the more elastic demand will be. Makes sense, right? Second, is it a necessity or a luxury? Needs are inelastic, wants are elastic. Third, how much of your income does it take? A price hike on a car is a way bigger deal than a price hike on gum. Fourth, time. The more time you have, the more you can shop around and find alternatives, which makes demand more elastic. And finally, brand loyalty. A really strong brand can make its customers way less sensitive to price changes.
And that brings us to the single most important takeaway. Businesses and governments don't just sit around measuring PED. No way. They are actively, constantly trying to influence it. A company uses advertising to build brand loyalty and convince you there are no good substitutes. Why? Because they want to make their product more inelastic, so they have more power to raise prices.
So that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Think about the last few things you bought. A coffee, your groceries, a new pair of shoes. Which of those were elastic purchases and which were inelastic? And more importantly, why? Once you start looking at the world through this lens of elasticity, I promise you, you will never look at a sale, a tax, or a price tag the same